Okay, so I have some
So, yes,
problems
right.
that I need help with, and those problems are to
Mhm.
do with things like where do naps fit into the platform? What does an org look like? What does a white label SaaS product look like? Um, how does an org's agent interact with users? Where do the chats sit so that they don't leak? These are all kinds of like we have point solutions for all of these things, but they are not reconciled. And so
Okay.
what I
Right.
value from you
Sounds
is that
juicy.
you have some use cases, like you know very clearly the things you want to do. You don't know how the application should supply those to you. And so what I've done is I've made a light mock-up of what I think the vanilla generic um, does everything but only a little bit version of the platform is. And I'd like to have you ask me, how about this thing? Or what if I want to? And then give me a little story, and I'll try to either fulfill it using the mock up, or I will have discovered a flaw in the mock up. How's that sound?
Great. Sounds
Okay.
brilliant.
Alrighty.
Let's
So
go for it.
let's get going without further ado. I'll share my screen. Okay, so
It's closer.
yeah, I'll zoom that in
Okay.
for you, mate. It's a little.
No, I'm just pulling it closer uh, in VR. Okay. All right.
All right, so this is how the system goes. I'll just give you a quick overview of it. Um,
Mm.
we got the chat box down here. Blah 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 blah. Whatever.
Okay. Yep.
Here's where you
Mm-hmm.
have your chats, right? You have a chats. This is the main chat window, and this is the stakeboard or the widgets. You click on the chats
Mm-hmm.
icon, it brings up the chats widget. The chats widget lets you
Mm-hmm.
navigate through different chats that are in different states. You can start a new
And
chat.
these are all your personal agents. Is that right? So this is just
Your chats, these are your
restricted to
personal
you.
chats. And so the data model is that there's your home repo, and then your home repo has child repos. So here I've got a repo called front end app, documentation, API server, whatever. I can make a new repo. I can clone. So I can clone from GitHub. And
Yep.
crucially, I can
Yep.
connect, which is what you do when you don't own the repo, but you want to interact with it, and you're going to get given some permissions to do so.
All right. Okay. Give me a second to think about that one. So, um, when I was saying this is your home agent, what I was meaning by that is the stuff that you talk to this agent knows about everything that you are interested in, including your own hierarchy of repos and your connected repos. And you can talk about that,
Yep.
and that agent can potentially also talk to other repos that you're not connected with, or the other agents attached to other repos.
Yes,
Um,
with the
to
proviso that I haven't figured out how agents attach to the system. So right now it's just a bot that you're having a chat with that has access to all your data.
right.
I'm not
Okay,
exactly
right.
sure.
And
There's a
that's
part of what I need help with is
right.
how do you turn it into an agent or agents and things like that.
Yeah. Well, an agent really is a chat stream, isn't it? That has
No,
access to some kind of persistent storage.
not necessarily. No, it's the agent may not talk to you. It may just operate in the background.
Sure, but it doesn't. Um, your agent. would be the one talking to you, but agents can talk to other agents through
Correct.
NL. They can trigger naps that just say a piece of Python code
Correct. But they would be, to
or an
use your
API call.
words, they would be able to push things around. So right now you pull because you have to type something for it to fly into action and do something. But a true agent would
Yeah.
be able to be triggered by any external triggers as well as just the passage of time. And then it would go and attempt to do tasks for you.
And it can also answer questions from other agents.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So you have the Naps widget, which is basically up here. You have whatever repo you're currently focused in on. So you can browse the files and the branches of that repo. And if you want to click to a
Yeah.
different repo, you go back to repos and you choose another repo. And now you've got the files from the documentation repo, for example. And the
When
naps.
as the sorry.
Yep.
Sorry, go on. Go ahead.
When the idea is that there's this concept of the focused, the location, like the current working directory. It's like a repo, a branch, and optionally a file within that branch that is selected to be worked upon.
Okay. Question.
Yeah.
One of the best features of Cursor is to be able to pull in different focuses using your terminology there
Right.
in order to talk about two files or more, or even two repos or more.
Okay, so if I want to
And
talk about two
yeah,
repos, I would go to my home repo, which is the
hmm
one that has all these as children, and I would say I want to talk about the documentation repo and the mobile app repo, and I want to make sure that all the documentation includes the information contained within the code of the mobile app repo on the main branch. And so that would trigger it to say that I want to talk about those
yeah,
two
yeah.
repos, right?
How do you want questions? Do you just want me to answer
Give them
each of
to me
them,
any way
or
you can, buddy,
scribble
because
notes?
yeah, because I don't. There isn't a right way to do this. If I can just take a quick note here, I want to be able to select multiple repos to add them to context in a chat. There.
And
Right.
this is a temporary one because eventually context windows will get large enough. But already seeing um, taking a repo, concatenating it, and coming up with like 3 million tokens. But it's coming up with 3 million tokens because it includes a test database, which
Yeah. So I think that no
you can
matter
maintain
what
through it all.
happens,
So
it's always worthwhile to narrow the context as much as possible because you just
I agree.
vastly increase your chance of
Yeah,
getting a good response.
yeah. And I think in this flow, you can exclude. So consider documentation repo, but not
Oh, that's a
my
good point. Yeah. Okay.
notes.
So I'll make a note of that. You also want to be able to exclude some items from the list.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. And what I'll try and do is if I can just skim over all of the features very lightly, very briefly, and then I'll come sail into some more specific things
yeah, cool.
at the end. Yeah. Um, the key concept, and this is sort of what I'm struggling with, is that here's, for example, your account, right? But this is just the
Mm-hmm.
data.
Mm-hmm.
This is just actually interacting with your actor repo. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you're currently focused on your actor repo or the home repo, I gotta choose a name and stick to it. You can call on the settings where settings relate to that focused repo, the working repo. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when you're talking about things, it seems to make sense to allow you to have any number of repos or any amount of data that you want. But the execution of it is always happening in exactly one location. It seems bonkers to want to have the chat simultaneously occur in multiple repos. It's about multiple repos, but it's happening in exactly one place. Otherwise, you have like a form of schizophrenia or split-brained computing. Like it's not, that seems fundamental, that when you're trying to do something, you're doing it in one exact place.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea was that, like, if I'm focused on my home repo, I have my repository settings, which are things like where's the origin, where's the mirrors, where's the backups, some permission settings for it, some roles that are assigned within it, and a registry of naps, so I can install a new nap, or I can disable or enable or remove naps from being installed or available to this current repo. The idea being that when I focus on another repo, like the documentation repo, I can then hit settings, which will bring up the settings widget, and now it's focused on the documentation repo, and now I can manage the settings for that repo. So I can add different naps to the settings repo.
Um, hmm. Let me think. Um, Wouldn't that lead to fragmentation of what naps you can use? I know
Yeah,
there's benefit in restricting naps to repos, but uh, it would be
you
annoying, for
can,
example, if you need to go through into if you added a whole bunch of new repos and then you had to go into each repo individually and then install the naps, even though at the top level your
right,
agent already
but
knows about
no,
these
tell
naps.
me what's an example, a concrete example of what you're trying to do there, because it stands to reason that the children should inherit from the parent anyway,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. It's exactly that inheritance. But
But
that
then the
feels like
naps,
that should
then
be available.
then it is available.
So,
I guess it's not plainly shown here. Okay, so what I should show on the screen is I should also show the inherited naps, permissions, and other settings from the
right.
parent, right? And then that way
Yeah,
you could
yeah,
see what's because I feel like the naps have to be installed somewhere, because you have to say, you can't just pick from the whole wide world on the fly. You you could, but you shouldn't,
yeah.
right? Like, to have
Oh, yeah.
reliability.
You probably don't want to. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
right. And
Um,
as
and
a
also there's sorry, go on.
as a controller of a repo, you want to restrict what naps are able to run inside of that repo or on that repo. Now, people can externally, they can view that data and parse that data in any way they're allowed, provided they had the permissions to read it. But the naps that can make changes to the data, or the naps that come by default with that repo, should be registered somewhere, is what my instinct says.
Yeah, I agree. And it's almost like inherited naps are shown, but not necessarily executable until
Right,
there's some explicit
right.
um,
There might be
command.
you might be able to set up your provisioning system so that when you have it configured so that when you go new repo, it has a list of default apps that you like that are going to be added. But it's not about saying that the nap can't do something to the repo unless it's installed, because you would have a whole bunch of naps installed on your home repo that could do things to any other repo that you had control of, because it makes no difference whether it's you or it's applications on your behalf or if it's agents on your behalf. We don't care. If you've got permission to make the modifications, then you can do it. And so I just wonder if you aren't maybe getting conflated between me being able to use a nap on a repo versus the repo itself as a standalone entity being able to execute an application for some task that it's been given.
Hmm. Hmm. That's possible. What do you think? So, uh, if you, I'd express it this way.
Yeah,
Um, your your home repo has a library of naps,
yeah,
um, but that could quite quickly get quite large.
right.
And you, if your focus goes into one repo and your library is large and safe, it's got three different ways of pulling down Gmail, just because you've been a bit lazy and try something out and so on. Um, the When you're inside of the repo with that focus, your agent needs to know actually what is your preferred, and so it's almost like um, we should prompt the agent to suggest from your library, hey, you've got three naps that could do this.
No, I believe
Which
that
one do you
we are
want to
talking
use?
about a different thing to what an install means. When you run a nap on your home repo, you are effectively installing it. Um, when you install a nap on another repo, depending on what the nap does, it runs as though it was that repo. Versus you using a nap, the nap is running as you and it's targeting another repo. But the installed naps are run as the repo. They're like the repo's tools. And so the repo agent or agents, depending on how you configure it, have access to those tools to do whatever jobs they're asked to do because they act as that repo.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think we're closer. I think I'm not articulating well. Um, what's suggesting is your home repo has a whole bunch of naps, your library, um, but you don't necessarily want all those naps to be considered every time when you call your agent that is focused on a specific repo. Perhaps you want to use, you want to reduce that to saying it's not an installation, it's already installed, but it's permission to use this nap on this repo.
That sounds like a piece of configuration data that you would store in your home repo that is talking about another repo, like it's indicating a preference or some kind of a shortcut to choose a nap to carry out a task. I would like to push that to one side because that's only a problem once we have enough naps to be considered too many, whereas right now we have none,
Yeah,
and so we can solve that
yeah,
one
yeah,
incrementally. Um,
yeah, yeah.
the
Agree.
core issue I'm trying to get at is like, what is an agent? Where does an agent live? what are some examples of some agents and what they can do. I've nearly finished the quick skim over. If I can just keep ripping through this and then come back around. So the idea of the widgets was that, see, I've got whichever widget I've selected shows as the current context for the chat. So you see here, as I go from files to naps to repos to the chats widget, if I talk to this, if I have this chat, the bot knows what widget I've selected and what's going on in that widget. And so that allows it to understand the context that I'm operating in when I talk to it. Like, I'm like, tell me about the second chat in the list. You know, that's only possible if I've passed, right?
Yeah, that's
because
really nice.
I need
like
to
that.
pass in the context of the widget. And the idea, this is really the key design realization that I had, or what I'm trying to chase down here, is that this state board could be simply a browser window on the web. And when I click something or do something in that browser, it shows up in the chat as an action that I took, so that the bot is aware of what I did. And when the bot does something on the web page on my behalf, it's listed as an action too, so that I know, oh, the bot clicked that button, or the bot filled in that form, and so on and so forth. And so the only real difference between a widget that is bundled as a nap versus a plain web page is that the naps are cooperative. So they know that they're being run as naps, and they know how to take advantage of the connection to Artifact to enhance their operation. But really, the design goal from us should be this, that there's no, other than that, there's no difference. This could just be the news website you wanted to browse, and the agent's filling in the form for you, and you're just sitting here watching it tick over. Or you're going back in history and clicking on it to see what it did and how it got there.
Yeah. And one of the things I've been copy and pasting is because, and I know this will be solved in time, but because of context window and so on, eventually a stream, a thread will start to feel stale and start to forget stuff earlier on. However, you can then cut and paste that as context into a new chat, and suddenly it springs back to life, and it understands where you're at.
Yeah, so I did
the other thing,
derive a new chat from some old ones that are summarized and linked to, so the bot knows some shortcut context, but if needed, can walk the prior chats to get precise information out.
spot on.
Okay.
And also combining, because I think you've already got
Yeah, I
this,
said
you can
that,
have
combining.
more than one.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Yep.
you combine two chats, both summarized context window collapses, and now you're getting
right. Chat. I also think that chats should auto segment, so they can be exploded out. So like, as you're chatting, once you've changed context, the bot should kind of be aware of that, and it should kind of make it show as a topic switch. But whilst these things feel very doable for us, they are time holes, and I want to focus on getting just enough platform to get the stuck loop going. So like, repos are essential to the stuck loop. Agents seem essential to the stuck loop. This UI is essential to the stuck loop. All this whole thing appears to be purely in service of the stuck loop. And that's the minimum form that we should take. And then all these extra niceties that you and I have a near endless stream of can be dumped into the stuck loop, and it starts to improve itself. Because fancy things, I was almost able to clone the naps repo that I work in every day, to make the artifact code. I was able to clone it into artifact, and so it will be able to present here as a repo, and then it's able to be worked on and talked about and improved. And so all these features
That makes sense. Yeah.
right, and it should even be able to do deployment. Like, so a great example of an installed nap is if I take the front end app settings, I should have like a deployer, a deployment nap is there, which is going to pull in the front end code, bundle it to be compatible with the browsers, sign it, publish it, that kind of thing. And that's an example of a nap that I want to specifically install, and I want to hook it up to be triggered when there's a commit or some other conditions. And then that's a little computer, really. It turns the repo into this little computer. Signals come in, whatever, and then now this executable code modifies the repo or modifies some universal state, and that's a computer.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, and so, like I said, we had files here. So you've got a repo that's your current targeted location. As we discussed, there should be a way to add multiple targets. So I don't know how I'm going to do that, but see how, like, in the navigation message here, what I'm selecting is changing, but I can see now that what I need to do is, first of all, allow multiple files to be selected, but I should also have a little button or something here that lets me select from a different repo, a different branch, and different files, and then add it all to the context that I'm building up here before I do my next thing. I should also be able to, in natural language, ask for the context to be assembled on my behalf by a bot that goes around finding the things. And it's like, hey boss, was this the context package you wanted? And you're like, yes, no, tick, tick, cross, add, manual navigation, blah, 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 blah. And then that's how you build up the context that you want to talk about.
Yeah, and if you're combining different repos and different chats or threads, if you've given it the same context files, you don't want those duplicated, of course.
No. Okay. That's good, but again, that's a nicety that we can add at some later date. Here's one of the big issues coming up. I got an issues widget, which was meant to be like stucks or problems or whatever we want to call it. And I added a solutions widget, which is answers or something like that. Now, this is where the things get sticky, because it's like, well, do we need solutions and problems, or
that feels clunky. An issue and a solution is so closely coupled that flicking between the two.
okay, but you can't really
then you've
talk
got
about
hunting
just
pack thing.
problems without talking about solutions, right?
Yeah, but is it the case that well, no, it's not. Let me think. Rephrase that. A problem can have multiple solutions, and a solution can
Solve
address
multiple problems.
problems.
Yep.
And so that sounds like a lot of hunting and pecking. So how do we link between that many-to-many problem?
What are some
in the
words that
UI?
describe a thing representing a
These are good questions, by the way.
Yeah, no,
Good
this
meat
is
here.
the meat of it, really. When the UI comes up, I love UI because it forces you to actually have a fucking answer, and it forces you to think about the data structure that enables the UI with as little gymnastics as possible. And that's really the goal here, is to keep the
Yeah.
data structure of like repos all the way down, plus stacks and solutions, which appear to be two different objects actually, but similar mechanics. Where do all those things meet and how is what I use to understand the data structure. That's why I'm so big on UIs, because I'm like, it's not about the UI. It's about, does the data structure surface in the UI with no gymnastics?
Yeah, and also those gymnastics, I'd say, is when you see it, things become glaringly obvious. Um, for example, customer data not syncing with CRM. It's like, well, great, that's just a worry bead. What I'd want to see there is a whole bunch of possible solutions, kind of maybe indented or something. And then when I went and looked at the solutions, I'd want indented a whole bunch of potential problems that that solution could address.
Right. Right.
But
That makes
having to
sense.
flick between each,
All right,
just
so
you
I'll
know,
definitely kill that. I'll unify it, but what would I call it? This unified place?
well, I'm wondering. Now I'm just talking through this, just fresh. I'm wondering whether you do need to unify it. So if you're looking at problems, it's like this problem has indent three possible solutions.
Correct.
Um,
And sub problems
so
as well,
your
because
task as a yep, yep, sub problems with sub solutions, problems and solutions all the way down. But your task there as a user is I've got a problem space. Uh, whereas what you've got at the moment um, feels okay in terms of I'm talking about problems or I'm talking about solutions, but it's the same underlying data. It's
right.
just in the opposite direction.
Right. Now, I just want to point out that this UI, you should be able to go and customize, like write your own one and leave out solutions or leave out problems and have your own widget. Well, I'm trying to make the generic workbench where everything is available to you, just without any fanciness. It's just, this is like the
Yeah,
almost
no,
the debug view.
that's absolutely fine. But I'm kind of riffing on what you're saying quite rightly. Is the UI throws up red flags about the underlying data
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, I guess what I was saying with that problem solutions being different
Mm.
contexts. When you're talking about problems, you're looking for solutions. When you're talking about solutions, you're looking for problems. But the underlying data structure is this many to many, um,
Yeah.
where a
So what to
problem
do?
and a solution has a link of some sort.
A
It's
link,
like,
yeah, a link of some kind. You might want to sit there and riff on ideas. The idea, I think, was to be able to go into the solutions widget, highlight a couple, select a bunch, and then talk about them and say, hey, do you think this could be a solution for this other problem over here? But
yeah, it's that sort of thing, isn't it?
it sounds like maybe you
As if
should I
some
should I
people,
should unify them, because if I think about GitHub issues are either open or closed, and closed just means that it's a solution. It's a problem that met with a solution. It's kind of a bit weird to have a solution with no problem, but that is what inventing is all about in a lot of ways.
yeah,
Um, and
yeah,
so if I
I think,
just made it this
yeah,
one sort of thing where we need a word that's not solutions, it's not problems, it means the act of or the progress of
Re
or
res yeah. I was about to say resolutions, but that's not right.
innovations. Because innovations, you
Yeah,
can kind of end up at problems or solutions depending on which way you go, right? You're just talking
an
about,
innovation is a problem solution fit, right?
right?
That's
It's
an
a good
innovation.
word for problem solution, right? Okay, so
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
call the light bulb innovations and we'll wipe out issues. And all that's really supposed to be is just a way for you to search and chat and talk about things to do with innovation, which is this UI sucks because blah blah blah. Or I've got an idea. What if we segment the chats and then auto topicize them? Like those are innovation type. Um,
And that combination is really, I think, powerful. I'm not entirely sure how to display it, but
I
I've
think
got
it's
a
just. I
square
think it's
peg,
just.
you've got a square hole.
Yeah. The
Uh,
widget, the initial widget can just be a list with a tree, like a folder structure where you can browse into it and it shows you links like this solution has points at these problems and you can navigate up or down in the stream. And it's really just about enough of a widget to get you going to surface the data structures under the hood. And the reason why the problem solution data structures are important is because they are so far the only non-Git data structures in the system. They are the only thing that can exist in isolation, and the data structure I've picked for them is they're basically a little sealed, signed bit of data that has a provenance history. Like it's like this is modified by this, modified by that. This was posted by this person. It did this merge or this fork, and now it's done this merge. And now here's these problems, these solutions that are pointing at it. Now here's some problems with the solutions, and they're these very loose, free floating. They are affiliated with a repo, but they're not bound to it. So they can actually exist across multiple repos because of the nature of the cryptographic structure that they hold. It's still the same valid thing, no matter which repo it's
yeah,
in.
exactly. And that, for example, with the TFU, they've got multiple projects and people solving the same problem in different
Yeah,
projects.
yeah. And so that handles
Um,
that. Now, when you really get into it and suddenly you realize actually this repo should merge with this repo, then that's a different operation. But it's these issues that surface that you get your first signals of duplication from.
yes, yeah, yeah. I think there's a lot more to be said about that, but for now, yes.
For now, right? Okay, so this will be just enough to get going, and then so long as it gives us enough of a place to be able to put the problems we have with this very interface and with Artifact and the Dreamcatcher, put them in there, and then start working on them. That's the key. That's all it has to do. This whole this whole shouldn't say damn, sorry. This
Yeah.
whole machine, this whole complex is there to simply take in problems and allow us to solve them.
Right. And because we're talking about the fuzziness of an agent looking through these in NAL, you can get close fits. You
Right?
get a solution that's not quite right, but pretty close. It seems
Yeah.
to be intending to do the same thing that you're trying to do, but it doesn't actually do it.
Yeah.
So then you can fork
Yeah,
and,
and then the
make
AI,
whatever
because
changes.
in a way we sort of want to be building a massive Wikipedia for bots, because they need to, the asymmetry of information applies to AIs as well. Like if you tell a bot the answer, it can verify that that is the answer, whereas to tell a bot to find out the answer is extremely
Hmm.
asymmetrically hard, and that's the nature of information in this universe. in this universe, and it applies to AIs as well as humans. And so if we are trying to build this massive Wikipedia that the bots can go and look up because it's bot friendly, but it also makes each bot a contributor as well, plus you can attach money to hard problems. That's kind of the structure that we want. It's like Wikipedia for AI.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
And then background agents can,
grind away.
propose merges.
Yeah.
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 all that kind
And
of thing.
so let's talk about a background agent. A background agent, I would imagine, is I would make a repo called, the repo name would be the background, I want to say background grinder, but there's probably an inappropriate name for such a thing. But the background grinder, then you go into the settings for the background grinder and you go into the naps and you say, I want to install the Dream Crusher nap, where that would go around.
Mhm.
And the Dream Crusher nap is designed to deduplicate or produce a short list of possible deduplications that can occur within the targeted scopes.
Can you pass in, or how would we pass in input? For example, I want you to crush the dreams of only these 3 repos,
I think that would be
or I
in
want you to crush the
configuration
dreams of all these
instructions,
repos.
or basically when you go to set the bot up, you'd point to a file that represented the system prompt, and you'd say,
Excuse me.
this list of repos only, and here's your token budget, and here's your stop conditions. Go.
Sorry, something in the back of my throat. Yeah, I agree. So you can pass in, or even have hooks where the pass-in variables are at message time.
Yeah, something like that.
Excuse me. So you can type in a message to an agent saying, "Dream crush only these repos," or "Dream crush everything." Um,
So
and
I'm still a bit fuzzy on the exact
presumably
mechanics of it, but that sounds like narrow enough that we could solve that problem in isolation, because we're like, that's a good scenario. Let's make a mechanism that allows that to happen. I believe that such a mechanism can be developed.
yeah. And also, it would be trivial to have some kind of background process saying "Dream crush everything every day" at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Yep. Or anytime there's some new data, or anytime a new stuck shows up that matches the search pattern, go, go, go.
Yeah, good.
Okay. All
That
right.
works.
Yep. Help is just a widget, so you can now talk. You can select part of the help section, and then chat about it and ask about it and whatever.
Yep.
Um,
So that's generated on the fly based on the focus.
it is and it isn't. Like, the help represents a set of documents that are static, but when you select something or do something or indicate something, then your agent has some context for it, and so it can build on it. But also, I would imagine that your agent can look up the help to get instructions on how it should do stuff as well as just you. And it should be able to cause the help center to display things. Like, you're like, hey, how do I do this thing? And it would pop up the help widget, select it on the article that is relevant, and talk to you about it as well.
Okay. That's good. One thing I've been using a lot is Concat. What a brilliant tool, Concat.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
released a new version tonight
and
as well, so hopefully I didn't break it for you.
oh, I've not updated.
It'll auto update you,
But
which is probably not a great feature. I made it so that you
but
could install it here. So you can install Concat in bolt.new and then Concat the whole app here so that I can go talk to O3 about things I want to do. Right?
yeah, cool. Yeah.
Concat.
The actual use case of being using it is you get a repo and you've got a question about that repo. Concat the repo, exclude it in order to keep it to the context, and include, say, if there's a very large number of test files, you include, a few so that it knows what the context is, and then use that as your input into a new chat. So the Concat is turning out to be an incredibly useful way of maintaining
Right,
focus.
but all that Concat is supposed to be in this system is you would go around picking your context or your Concat components from, you'd be like, I want the front end repo, I want the whole repo. The mobile app, I want just this folder. And that's
Right.
really, you're just assembling. The Concat is happening here in this context that you're assembling, and will give you a bot to help you do it, like an intelligent sort of thing that pulls in relevant materials. And then when you press enter on your chat, that's the context. Everything's in there.
Ideal.
Yeah.
Ideal. And presumably, the results of that concat is stored away from the repos, because I'm constantly stumbling over old concat.
Yeah, it's completely it's stored efficiently by using the Git objects, so it doesn't have to duplicate the data, but it's stored by reference within the chat itself. So it's like a
Right.
it's like
Yeah,
a
good.
bundle of stuff that represents all the context you wanted, and then when you go to rehydrate that context at some later date, it's all done by Git objects and hashes, and so it pulls it all in as it needs it on the go rather than keeping it around.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ideal.
because the idea was that I didn't get to finish the feature, but here it says, so I've selected the repositories widget to add to the context here. It's currently configured to the mobile app in the main branch. But the idea is that once I press enter or I say some instruction, that would change to be like, see how I've changed where I'm pointing, but at that point in time, it still records where it was pointing at that instant. And I want to say, like, it's got a commit hash with it as well, so that you can go back in time and see what the context was at these different times, as well as having the latest thing.
Yeah. Good. How do you refer if you've got these stacked up? You've talked about various repos, and it's like
Yeah.
1 and 3.
You mean
How's that done?
here? You mean selecting new ones or selecting old ones?
So say I've asked questions of 3 repos where the focus is just those individually, those 3 repos, and I think actually what I want you to do is now consider your answers to repo 1 and repo 3, but ignore repo 2.
So I think what I need to give you is a widget that allows you to browse the context of the current thread, and you'll be able to walk back the previous context and modify the context within the spacious, rich tooling of a widget, where the widget would look something like a file browser, but it would be able to be have multiple repos, multiple branches, multiple files. It's got intelligent filtering. It can build up your context. You can also point to previous parts of the chat you're in to refer to the current context, and that would be your context builder. So you'd click on the context builder, and that's where you'd modify something. Or you could chat about it and be like, can you narrow down the context to this, this, and this? And it'll be like, how about this?
Yeah. That.
Yep.
That.
That thing.
It's like, right, ignore this, because I've just been like brainstorming this, and I've, dropped a whole bunch of context here, but now I understand what I'm trying to do. What I'm talking about now is this and that and nothing else. So you're narrowing it each time.
Yeah, or expanding. And or expanding, but also referring to history. Like you're like, this context, and then 3 messages ago it was this context. Now I want to talk about the difference between those two, or the sum, or anything like that. So it's the idea of this whole interface is that you should be able to talk about any part of it with the bot, and the bot skills can help you use any part of it too. So and then when we generalize the widgets, sorry, did you have any questions or comments on that last bit before I move on to a different topic?
No. And roaring agreement.
Roaring agreement. Okay. And so here's an example of where, like, this is the weather widget. This is the view customer widget, right? Like, so in essence, this widget, the customers widget, is pointing at the branch front end app /main, and it's displaying the data because it knows how to interpret the data on the disk, or it's got a bailout mechanism where it's like it's not compatible, so it'll just show nothing. But the idea is that us and others can build these widgets that display data in different ways, and we don't have to, you just install it the same way as you install a NAP, because widgets can be bundled with naps or as naps, and then that allows you to extend what this interface is, because you're not confined to just the tools that we produce.
Yeah, absolutely. Good.
And so, yeah, the context browser is just another widget, and it's a specific version of a widget from a specific publisher. You're welcome to add your own and switch it out and do all that. You can kind of customize everything, but this is the foundation bit. This is under the hood. This is as close to the raw metal as you're going to get. And to be honest, it's not terribly bad. Like, the fact that I can run through so many diverse operations just in this demo. Now, you haven't sort of come at me with all the extra stories that you want, but that said, I think that we should take a little bit of solace in the fact that there's some incredibly complex operations that we've wrestled with over the years are able to be fairly easily summed up or described within a user interface that took a couple of hours of vibe coding.
That's kind of, heartening.
That says something, that at least says something about the nearness to correctness of the backend data structure, that the data structures allow this flop of this kind of expressiveness. There's something there that's close to right, is what I'm trying to push with that.
Yeah, I'm getting that. And if it's easy to do this, then it's easy to do something else.
That's right.
Without doing any fundamental, heavy lifting.
Nah, no fundamental gymnastics, no fucking weird translation layers. It's like you could use the mechanics of this system to build a vast array of things. There may be a proof in there somewhere that says that possibly you could build all things, because you can probably say that all software fits in a Git repo somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a
Well, yeah.
Git-based AI system, and so that would imply that it can process, package, publish, and consume any possible kind of software.
Yeah, or it's not just software, is it? It's any possible kind of information.
Right, because software can process any kind of information, and so here we have the universal tool or the universal thing.
Some universal something or other.
Universal something. Yeah. But look,
Yeah.
I mean,
You could put the Library of Congress in here and it would still work.
yeah. So, can can you hit me with some questions or some stories that you want to have me attempt to show?
I'd like to go back to something you mentioned about 5 minutes ago, which is where are the agents?
Yeah. Okay, so my best guess, just to slant the conversation early, is that all I want to do, I think, is that the naps are, some of them are agents, and so you'd really just have this sort of this configuration option for it being an agent or just being some classical application tools, and
Yeah.
that's the real only difference. And then because we have here permissions or roles, the agent would show up as another person that gets granted different permissions, because the agent can, for all intents and purposes, is a person.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because an agent is effectively a model that's prompted with context.
Yeah, and as humbling as it is, I think that the only real competitive difference that we supply is the ability to manage private context very cleanly and efficiently, and to allow people to collaborate on private context safely. And all the big players, I think, will always struggle to do that, because that requires an element of decentralization, but their business models rely on centralization. And so that, I think, is
Right.
our
Yeah.
position in the environment that we find ourselves in, is this purveyor of a neat little system to do rapid private context AI operations in collaboration with others, whilst also being connected to the big cloud in the sky if you wish.
Yeah. And that's no small thing.
No.
Um, that's that's pretty good. Okay.
All right. So did that answer your question? Because
It did. So,
sort of though, right?
an agent as a role, as like any other person. Um, if I were to interact with this, my model is inside my brain. My prompting is whatever I'm trying to do, and the context is what I'm trying to do it on.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just another role, which makes complete sense.
Right.
Next question then is um, the uh, how we control agent to agent conversations, as in, I want this agent to talk to this one. It might know about lots of others, but ignore those because I don't like them. I just want you to talk to that one. So again,
Can I have a
it's
concrete
kind of
example?
constraints. Sure. I have an agent that is going to search the web for me, but I want it to use DuckDuckGo and not Yandex.
Where DuckDuckGo is an agent,
Yeah.
or is it just a tool?
let's say it's an agent, because I'm
Okay.
talking about agent to agent here. So
Okay.
pass the
So
query
how
on
that
to
would work?
DuckDuckGo agent.
Right. So you'd have your agent would be installed. It would be visible under. This is supposed to be users, whatever. And then you'd see what roles the agent had, and I think one of the roles would be the speaker role, where it could speak to an agent, and in that role you would narrow the permissions down to can speak to this particular agent and no one else.
Yeah.
Yep,
And the flip of that is also valid. An agent could be said, you can only be spoken to by this other agent.
that's right. So it might be a mute. The mute button might be on the agent. It's like you can't talk unless spoken to, and you can only be spoken to by, and then you'd narrow that list down. It'd be
Yeah,
the
yeah,
same
yeah.
as
And that,
giving web permissions or network permissions to a running app. You'd say like you can make outbound comms to these entities, and you can receive from these entities, and that's it. And you just configure it that way,
yeah,
I think.
yeah, yeah, I agree. And you could always set it to, hell, I don't care. Everyone can talk to me
Everyone, I
and
am
ask me a question.
open for all. Yeah. So that, and another trick is cron for agents. So like trip off at a time, or
Yeah, yeah,
as well as
yeah, yeah.
triggers.
I think that's yeah, it's going to be quite a big one.
Yeah, it's useful. Cron's awesome. Cron's like a way to, yeah, it's amazing. Cron for agents, agent mute, and who it can talk to and receive from. Yep. Okay.
Next use case would be discovery between agents. It's like, hey, you say I can talk to anyone. Uh,
Right.
it's
And then
like, who's out
it's
there?
like, oh, I want to look for it. Oh, okay. Well, here's the sort of natural application searcher. So you would, this tool, all these widget tools are able to be driven by an AI agent too, and not just by them clicking the buttons, but by the API underneath. And so I assume that it would do the equivalent of saying database, and then it's like it finds this thing, it goes and reads the docs, it might install it with some very restricted permissions, and then it would run it. Is that
Yeah, yeah, so, sort of, um, but yes, not sort of, yes. And
Oh
that's
no,
that.
actually you are. It is different what you're asking, because an agent is a running instance of a NAP that has an AI function in it, right? So it's like a service that also
Yep,
takes plain text. So the
yep.
NAP represents the application package, but a running instance of it is a service, and an even narrower form of service is an AI service, and that is an agent, I believe. Like it
Yes, and
keeps
the AI
running.
service has a context, be it
Service has a
spread
long running
or whatever you've
context,
given
right?
it.
A long running
Yep.
context, and that's what makes it an agent versus just a service, because a pure service is just a set of classical programs that are long running, and an agent is a classical long running program that also has an inference function in it as well, versus
Yes.
yeah, versus just a bot, where a bot like is short running and is just like a turn by turn conversation, for example. That's not an agent. That may trigger an agent, but it's not an agent because it's not long running, in the sense that it's only for as long as your conversation goes. whereas an agent would
Yeah,
have an indefinite
it's a
timeline.
throwaway.
Transient.
Yeah, but as a transient agent,
Right.
but the
Yeah,
agent
right. That's a
has
good way to think
that
about it.
context.
Yeah, like a transient agent is just a chat.
Yeah, yeah. Now this is probably not for now, but it's maybe worth noting down. What would be excellent is if there's an agent that is been poring over a problem, that is open to other agents to ask it questions. Um, how do we? How does the agent who's never thought of this problem but wants an answer to it discover the one who's been burning all these tokens and is sitting there fat, dumb, and happy with the answer?
The answer is the important thing. The agent is irrelevant. The answer should be within that global Wikipedia as a solution, and the working should be available to be browsed and perused. Talking to the agent doesn't give you anything.
Um, uh, it, um, the answer isn't everything, though, is it? Because you might want to query the working out,
But the working out would be
which is
a
the
good answer would
thread.
supply that to you. The only case where you'd want to talk to the agent is if for some reason the working was secret and you didn't have any other, you couldn't browse it yourself. And so,
Which devolves down to the permissions of actually seeing the collapsed
yeah, but
result, or even if it's a semi result, isn't it?
I think I have a global
Yeah.
answer for you though, in that the
hmm
discovery of the agent is equal to the discovery of the problem or the solution, which should lead you to the agent one way or another. And then you can either talk to the agent or consume a suitable solution, or upvote the fact that there isn't a suitable solution and this fat, dumb, happy agent is sitting there with the answer, but it should be free and you don't have it. So, someone please, that's a different kind of problem that you have now declared.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That works, right?
That works, doesn't it?
Mate, there's a lot of. I'm
It does.
getting a good feeling about this. I feel like there's a lot of stories that can be answered here.
Yeah. Okay, the next one. I'm digging deep in this one. um, Partial solutions. So we got problems, we got solutions.
Yeah, I
But
think that who are
life's
you
not
to
always
say
black and white.
who are you to say that a solution is complete or incomplete? I think that they're all just solutions, and it's up to the observer to rank them. I envisage that there will be subscription lists where you'd subscribe to a curator who has gone through and ranked the solutions on, worthiness, suitability, whatever. And you could use that as one of the hints. You could use number of how much money was paid towards it as a solution as another metric. You're kind of free to make your own judgment. Like it's the same question as like, what's a good package on NPM? So I'd go to NPM, I'd find whatever packages might suit me, and then I'll apply my own heuristics to figure out if it's worthy or not. One of them might be how many
No,
weekly
that's
downloads.
true. That's true because solution sounds like, hey, we're done.
Nothing's done.
But and nothing is ever done.
No, it's just done
And a
relative to who.
half-done thing. Yeah, some poor bloke spends 10 years on Fermat's Ethereum, doesn't get a final answer,
No,
but does a
kicked
lot
out
of
a whole
work.
bunch of gems
Is a
along the
solution.
way. Those are still valuable
Yeah.
things. And so I just want to re-highlight the data structure of the problem and the solution where neither of them cause the other to change. So if I make a problem and a solution comes along, the problem is a cryptographically finalized item. Having a solution, the solution points at it, but doesn't require the problem to alter. There's no such concept of a problem accepting an answer. The problem stays, the solution stays. It's a matter of opinion that it was solved. And people are free to publish
And
those
you
lists.
can fork problems, of course. So if you get half a solution and then you go, oh, yeah, that was quite close.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase the problem. You're effectively forking that problem.
Yeah.
And because you're forking it, the solution still points to that problem.
Yeah.
And now you can update the problem.
Yeah, but and
And any, yeah,
yep, carry on, carry on.
yeah. And you've still got a fork. Sorry, you still got a link back to the original problem, so that
Yeah.
if someone solves that in a new way, that's after
That
you
should
fork.
trigger your notification system to be like, oh, you still interested in that because this new
Consider
thing
this.
came
Yeah,
up.
yeah, that works. I can see that working.
It's starting to fall into
Yeah,
place, I think.
yeah. It's getting harder and harder to pick holes in it. Okay. Agents, and that's the idea space, innovation space. And the innovation space, we've talked about discovery. Discovery has to do with reducing context. You start with all, but reduction of context can be things like permissions as well as relevance. So if I'm just, give me 2 seconds. I'm going to
Sure.
apply this to TFE. Well, that's embarrassing. I can't find a hole in it. So that innovation space deals with multiple repos, brackets, projects, and TFU's terminology. Those are split down with many to many problems versus solutions in the innovation space. Has the forks, has merges, has discovery. Yeah, man, I can't think of anything. Just what we've described would solve distributed, you know, volunteer innovation like we're seeing in the TFU.
Okay, so let's talk landing page for an org. So you would come into your account, and I imagine that I'll need to add something that says add an org or create an org. Or I might put it under a repository so that when you go new repo, it could have a type. So instead of a language here, I'd make it a type. It'd be like, is it an org? Is it a standalone repo? Is it another active repo? Things like that. And then once you've made an org, then you can sort of control the membership to it. You can sever your parent relationship with it, so you can make it free floating, where it's like nobody controls it now. It's at the mercy of the hoster to keep going. And
Yeah.
once the hosting becomes decentralized, there'll be no stopping it. It sort of just sits there executing faithfully. If you come to an org page and you weren't logged in, I imagine you just see like the widget, the standard widget that shows up for that org that looks a lot like a Facebook page or a GitHub profile page. It's got some instructions, some info. They could present a cheap little agent that you could talk to about it. And then if you want to have more exotic models answer your questions, you need to log in and pay some money because no one's giving that stuff away for free.
So what constitutes an org?
An org is a repository that follows a specific format. And so you could technically say that any repo could be an org, but I want to make it limited just for the sake of sanity to be it's either it's a top level repo on the same level as an actor that may be controlled by 0 or more actors. And so it's
So
it's
is
a
that
first
zero
class
or
entity.
more actors? That's how an org differs from an actor. An actor is one,
Yeah, in Ethereum they call it an
whereas an
externally owned
org
account.
is yeah.
But I want to make it so that as an actor, you can also create another actor that can act like your facade. So I could make Jingle Bob Brown as an actor, and that actor would go about its business in the Dreamcatcher. No one would know that it wasn't a real actor, but actually that's just my shadow name or my pen name, and I control it completely.
Right. And in the structure, uh, would you have sub-organizations like a group company?
Um, that's a great question. I guess that in the same way that as an actor I could create an org but still maintain control over it, that would be the same as an org making an org but still maintaining control over it. And so that would be the hierarchy of orgs.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the
That
at that
works.
point though, it's sort of like, well, what's the difference between an org and a project? I suppose there isn't one at that point. Like, what does it even matter? It's like a project could have child projects. So it might be that really the only distinction is an org is possibly top level, but at the very least, I think an org needs the ability to have its own bank account. It needs the ability to pay for its own tokens. I think is the distinguishing factor, just like an actor does.
So the only difference between a project and an org is it's got a bank account. It
Um,
may have a bank account. It doesn't have to.
Mate, I'm feeling less and less like there is a difference between the two. It really would come down to naming, like, because a project can have members that come and go. A project can have its own funding internally. It can have its own agents. It can be an agent. It can have
Yeah.
children. It can, make actors that it controls. I don't think there's any difference really.
It doesn't sound like it.
No, it's just how you promote it, I
Doesn't sound
guess.
like it.
You'd make this thing and then you're like, this is the Tifu org. And it is because you said it is. And that's it. The mechanics are the same,
Yeah.
the widgets are the same. You can make a nice skin for it, whatever. But yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
kind of the same, right? I think
Yeah.
a project becomes a bit special if you set it free. Like if you make it become yeah, if you relinquish your control over it and it becomes free floating, I think that's warrants something a bit
That would
special.
be the same as a decentralized org.
Or
It
the same
amounts to
as
the
an
same
actor,
thing
like an
as a
external,
decentralized project.
a non-controlled actor, like an external actor. Like you and I are represented by our actor repositories inside the system, and from the point of view of the system, they have no parent. They aren't controlled by anyone.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. So we're in fact repos.
Yeah, we're
Um,
represented as repos, and we fully control them from the outside, but internally it has no parent. An actor repo has no parent.
so that is really the differentiation at the top level is you have no parent, so you're at the top level.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I suppose that's
orgs and
all it
projects at
is.
that point.
I suppose it's all
Yeah.
it is. It's just they're all just repos, and actors are special only because they're a little bit disabled. Like an actor repo is just, uh, man, I'm not seeing any difference really. It's just who controls it. How's it
Oh,
controlled?
an an actor is just something external to the repo that has permission to do stuff on that repo.
Oh,
And
no, like the actor repo is sort of, there's a difference between an actor, as in you and I, the flesh bound entities, versus an actor in the system. Like, it's modeled, an actor is modeled as a repo. And the only real difference I thought so far was that it didn't have a parent, but it could have a parent. It's not obliged to tell anyone it has a parent, so it can go around and just behave like, like there's no, a key principle of our system is that we should draw no distinction between an AI and a person. They aren't
yeah,
different, right?
yeah,
And the mechanics of them are no different. And so even if you had like a million bots running around the system, you're still bound to use your own AI tools to figure out who's real, who do you trust, who are your friends, where are they, what do they think about this, that, and the other political situation, what naps are they trusting to install. It's still the same social network going on, no matter how many artificial entities there are.
yeah, but there's subtlety here, isn't it? It's just my fingertips. So by saying top level repo is one that doesn't have a parent,
Mm-hmm.
what we're really saying is a repo that doesn't inherit anything from anyone
Right.
is that top level repo.
Yep.
However, you don't inherit anything by giving permissions from, say, a monkey hitting on the keyboard or another agent asking it for information. You're not inheriting any hierarchical information from that person. You're just accepting commands. You're saying, yeah,
Interactions. It's just
you,
interactions.
yeah, you as an actor can interact with me, but
Yep.
I don't inherit anything. Means
Right. Yeah. Right.
I'm
That
top
makes you
level.
an entity. Right. Right. The way you interact is as a peer.
Yeah, right,
Right.
right. Yeah, and you could make it completely decentralized by just saying, right, everyone come in and interact with this um, top level repo that has no hierarchy above it. And now you've got a decentralized org
Yeah.
floating
And so
around,
yeah, so the
decentralized
org could
project floating
choose to
around.
share its configuration. So it could choose to share um, everything about itself, which would mean that
Mhm.
you could see that it had no controller except for the hosting. And if you trusted the hosting, and or the hosting was decentralized, then you're like, yep, this is legit. I'm part of this org. No one's in charge except this bot, and that's how we're gonna do business.
Yeah, so there's two things here, isn't there? There is repos which may or may not inherit, depending on the structure above it. And the second are repos which may or may not have permissions to ask and interact with that repo. Um, so in the first case, you've got decentralized orgs, you've got repos, you've got sub repos, projects that can pop in, pop out, can go free floating. And in the second instance, you've got agents which have permissions to ask for stuff and interact, or you've got, meat space that can ask to interact. But there's only really two fundamental things here, um, where the uh, top level is defined as you don't. Um, there's no hierarchy that you inherit anything from.
Mm.
So as an actor, I have my repo, so I'm a repo as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't inherit anything from anyone because I'm a unitary,
Yep.
monkey.
Independent.
But I do have permissions to interact with other repos,
Yep.
um, which don't inherit and therefore at the top level, or I can, have permissions all the way down. Yeah, it seems really quite simple. I mean,
Okay. Now,
it's all repos.
for the social
There's
network and the trust
mm,
aspect, what I
mm,
was planning to do was that you would make these little shadow repos of yourself. So you would have your own, um, like, you would set your profile picture and your contact information and whatever in your actor repo, but you might not want to share that with everyone. And so you would make a child repo that was a shadow of your own self, and that's what you'd share to a
hmm
particular group, and you'd share it out on a group by group basis, and you'd make different shadow repos depending on the purpose and the audience. And the idea is if you change your name once, then it automatically ripples out to all your shadow repos, and then whichever circles have permission to read that piece of information can now read it. So you can be in these.
that's really nice. That's really nice. So, sorry to
Yep,
interrupt.
go.
Um, but the implication of that is I set up me as a repo, and then I want work me and home me and on holiday me as
Yep. And then,
repos that
yeah,
inherit everything that I can do.
because there's
But
naturally
then
me.
work me, yeah. So work me repo can then ask permissions of work repo,
Yep,
be granted permissions, but I can only interact through it as work me.
correct.
So it immediately containerizes anything I'm doing. It's like
Yep.
if I'm working with the work repo, I have to go through work me to do that.
Yeah, you'd pseudo in, you'd become, your Mimi would become this actor, and for as far as anyone else
Mm.
knows, that's who you are. But that's what I meant with this, like, shelling. You're shelling in and out because you should be able to present an unlimited number of these actor repos. As long as you paid the bills, that's fine. And it doesn't matter whether they're fake or not, or duplicated or whatever. It's everyone's supposed to have their own tools for defending against spam,
Right,
misdirection, mistrust, deceit. Like,
right, right, right.
you know,
Because I'm sure you're the same. I've got I don't know half a dozen email accounts because I
yeah,
try and manually do what we just
right,
described,
right,
but you
right,
don't have to manually do it because you inherit.
yeah,
And then, for example, if the org repo, if you get fired, it's severing your link
yeah,
to your work
yeah. And so what that
repo without
allows.
affecting anything else.
Right. From the
Yeah.
T3 set point side of things, you could have, I could have like 5 different identities. I could come in and earn the trust and join up to a bunch of different projects, commit things and not as those different pen names, and then at a point of my choosing, merge them all together and be like, actually, they were the same guy. It's me. Ta-da! Now I went from like the bottom 20% to now the top 80% because actually that's how much I was working, but for reasons I was needed to keep it separate.
hmm Well, that's so some indications of this are really fun. So I could create 5 uh, mini-me's,
Yep.
all work on Tifu.
Yep.
Uh, because they're repos, I could then merge those and get all the kudos from
Yep.
all 5.
All the medals, all the
And if I
kudos.
really fucked up on one, I could just say,
Burn
I'm
it.
going to ignore the one I fucked up on.
Yep.
I think I'm going to merge that one,
Yep.
these 4.
Yep.
But that other one that fucked up, still exists
Yeah.
if it
And
wants
no
to
one would ever
exist.
know that it was you. And that's your right. I think that's your basic right, is to have these independent
It's like
identities.
RBACs only with it's like 3D RBACs, isn't it? It's like there's an additional dimension on RBACs in that it still controls everything, but allows the person to be more than one person. There's a lot of meat in there.
Yeah, I think that
That's a
that's
really neat
essential.
idea.
This was something I was been trying to get going for bloody years. Like, literally
Yeah,
almost 9 years to have that
because
ability, because that feels like a
because
fundamental thing that's missing from the internet. I should be able to be whoever I want many times over. It's no one's business
Yeah.
except mine.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you can toast it, or you can double down on it,
Mm,
you can merge it, and do all
mm.
those things you can do with
Yeah,
repo
and
now.
then if you want different levels
Um,
of assurance, you can get like soulbound by going through a a notary public or some other kind of process where like they say this person is not duplicated. This is the authentic person. If you need that, fine. But for a lot of tasks, that's irrelevant.
yeah. Which is why, everyone's got so many email addresses. Some email addresses, well, it's why there's an incognito mode, right?
That's right. That's right. But
You
this
don't
is like
want
a
to clutter
this
it up.
is yeah. And like the same way that I have accounts under Chrome, right?
Yeah,
You just it'll be the same
right,
here.
right. Yeah, yeah. But those individual accounts are then your mini-me's that
Mm,
have the same permissions as you do,
mm.
but are not inherit from you, but don't push any guff back up the
No,
pipe, as it were.
no. And they can have their own configured naps, their own firewalls, their own goals. They can act as agents, the whole lot. So anyway, that's all fun.
That's really nice. That's really really nice. I like that. That's one of my favorites on this chat.
Oh, that's cool.
I really
That's
like
cool.
that.
Okay, well, buddy, I feel like one or two winner here. I'm not seeing
I think I think so. I'm going to think harder on how to break it, but um, that's exactly what I've just done. I spent the last couple of days trying to think how to break what we were talking about. As soon as we were talking about hierarchical repos,
mm,
um, and yeah, there's no stoppers here. Uh, some naming tightening up perhaps, but that's about it. There's nothing fundamental. There's no heavy lifting in the back end that needs to be changed to do anything that I've asked in terms
nah,
of use
dude, the
case.
the back end is actually very simple, man. It's like the soul
Mm.
branch was the key mechanism to that because in the soul branch is where you hold the tree relationships to the child repos. It's where you hold the permissions. It's where you hold the roles and the installed naps
Yeah,
and the computation. And honestly, that's it.
yeah. But the idea that just everything is represented by repos, and it's like, well,
It's
that's
quite
it,
fun,
really.
dude. It's really
Uh,
fun.
Everything just percolates out,
Yeah.
including kind of 3D RBACs, including inheritance,
Yeah, but also the
including dedupe.
yeah, having the
Sorry.
data structure of a stuck being a totally independent and yet compatible data structure that is cross-cutting across repos. That's the critical part
Yeah,
to making
yeah, yeah.
discoverability.
Absolutely, but you've already got that in hash addresses, which follow forks and merges and
Yeah,
all that good stuff.
yeah,
Um, so you're not going to break it by taking a problem and tweaking the problem. You're just forking that problem,
right.
but you're also bringing on any solutions, and then you've got cron repos that are
Right.
actually going to tidy up a bit, perhaps.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, so this
it's really
this
nice.
is pretty cool, right?
It's really nice. Yeah,
Now
it's really fucking ballsy.
tell me what I can't see. Tell me where ambient attribution goes.
Ambient attribution in this case,
Take all the time you need.
isn't ambient attribution just a nap, as in a repo, that runs on a cron job or is triggered and has visibility to another repo's contribution record?
Possibly that's one way to do it. Another more, shall we say, intrusive method is to make it a compulsory app that is deployed on every repo, and you actually got to go in there and strip it out if you don't want it. Feels a bit rude, but that's the rules.
Well, that's a default. If you can strip it out, it's not compulsory.
Well, it's sort of like bloatware. It
So
sort of comes and it sits there.
yeah, it's like being pre-installed with a browser. It's like
Yeah,
yeah, okay,
yeah,
fair enough.
yeah. I guess that it really comes into play when money starts changing hands. So I guess we haven't shown money in this account, in this model. So I guess I'd go into account and I'd fund it, or I'd go into the repo and I'd add money to that repo somehow.
Here's a question on attribution then. Is say I've got three attribution algos, one absolutely fair, one really not fair, third coin flip.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a repo where work's being done and therefore has a contribution record. Does the repo that's doing the work have assigned to it the attribution algo, one of those three? Or is it assigned to the repo that does the work, which could be an actor?
It's the observer that chooses the algo.
What do you mean by observer in this case?
Whoever is seeking to attribute chooses the algo.
So would that be? I'm trying to think only in terms of repos. Um, would it be the repo that gives some kind of value to another repo that dictates the attribution?
At point of trade, so if it was a direct repo to repo trade, then it would be up to either one of them could choose to run any attribution algorithm so that they can satisfy their own requirements. But if they came through a marketplace of ours, like the computing marketplace or like the labor marketplace, then because we set up the marketplace, we will run the algo. And so the broker of the deal in that case is the one that chooses and runs the algo. And if you don't like that algo, then you can go to the competing marketplace that either doesn't run an algo or runs a different one or slightly tweaked. But that's the Darwinian competition because it's like,
we could simplify that a bit. Though.
Okay, simple's good.
If we say the marketplace is itself a repo,
Yeah.
and a top level one,
Yep.
and has a bank account,
Yep.
and some logic around attribution, and then pays another repo based on this other repo's record of contribution, then it's down to this other repo then to do exactly the same thing. It's got money in, and it's the repo that receives the money that disperses it, but it's the repo that pays the money that, well, actually also disperses it. So
no, that's
the
a good
logic of
point. That's a good
attribution
point.
is
It's
inside of it.
the sender of the money, I think, is the one whose opinion on how the dispersal should go matters most. But
Yeah,
because there's two modes of operation there, right? There's like direct peer-to-peer trading where each peer, they might agree on an algorithm before the trade was executed, or they might say each of us pick our own, and then it really is an honor system on how much of that gets upheld. So the payer will run its version of the algo and say, this is how I think you should distribute the money I'm paying you, but ultimately it's your choice. And the receiver would run their algo and say, I'm going to distribute it this way. And that's fine. But the second mode of operation is when there's a repo in the middle that's facilitating the trade. And so, as you mentioned, a top level repo that is severed of control, that is running completely ballistic, that has intelligence within it. It can manage its own upgrades. It's got its own bank account. When it facilitates a trade, it runs the algo to do the dispersal for how the money goes through, because it is inserting itself in the pay chain. The buyer pays the market repo, and then the market repo pays everyone who it thinks deserves it. And that, I think, is ambient attribution. It's not, you can do it direct yourself, but the place where it really shines is in these marketplaces, where it's like, trade is better in a marketplace. Like, most money around the world goes through marketplaces, I think. And a system that was designed to run a marketplace with ambient attribution, in theory, would outperform or outcompete a marketplace that either didn't exist or that was run on some arbitrary rules that often don't favor either party and favor the platform owner.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's that simple, isn't it? I mean,
It is that simple, I
so
believe, eh?
I have a bank account,
Yep.
and I have complete control over how I distribute the funds. I offer you 10 quid. You don't have to accept it.
Yep.
I don't have to offer it. So there's an offering
That's right.
acceptance there.
Yep.
Once I give you the 10 quid, I have no say about what you do with that.
Correct.
So that then moves into your attribution
Yep.
algo.
Yep.
And away it goes.
Yep.
The bank works in exactly the same way. It's like, I don't have to put money in, but once money in, it can go and, fund loans with it.
Yep.
And when I get back, the bank has no say what,
No.
get money out of the cash line, has no say what I do with that from that
From
point
that
on.
point on,
So
yep.
there's an offering acceptance, and the attribution exists inside of the repo.
Yep.
And then when we're talking about brokers or escrow, let's say, for a simple attribution algo, which is if this then that, and we'll hold the funds. Exactly the same. It's exactly the same model.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It seems to just fall out.
Seems pretty natural. And so what we would be able to do is set up these little businesses or little projects where we'd make them as orgs that were free floating. We sever control of them. We set them with an ambient attribution algorithm. And then we're like, this project, the 12-kilometer fiber optic drone project, is not controlled by anybody. The dispersal of funds and even if we chose to, some of the project management decisions are made by this independent, self-contained thing.
Wouldn't it be fun? Wouldn't it be fun if you had a repo with a cron nap that occasionally triggers and then goes look for work, like Mechanical Turk work, earns money, has a bank account, but has no, it's at the top of the hierarchy, so it doesn't inherit anything. It just deals with its own permissions, but it's an AI.
Yep.
So then you've got an AI wandering around the space.
Well, I think there's actually money to be made from not exactly doing that, but from having an AI that goes around and brokers between Upwork deals. So you're like, hey, here's here's 20 grand, and it would go and apply for big jobs, and it would farm out the little jobs that make it up back to Upwork to get fulfilled by people.
Yeah.
And then it would make money on basically the bundling, the roll up of that work.
Yeah. It's like an AI driven taxi firm where all the taxis are AI driven,
including the taxi firm itself, right?
It can Yeah, and it can pay for its own servicing. It can
Yeah.
take fares.
It can
It
decide to
can,
buy new cars. It can
scout
put
out
out bids.
jobs.
It's like, look, we'll pay. We've got this problem with taxis. The
Yeah,
brakes fail after XYZ. We'll pay this much to have it solved.
right.
And now you've got actual
Yeah,
legitimate things in the world that are not controlled by anybody, that are intelligent and that are making meaningful changes within the world.
yeah. And because there's nobody fucking with them,
Yeah.
their reputation is knowable
Yeah.
because they're not going to, suddenly have a bad day
No,
or,
they're
get
predictable.
divorced
They're
and,
predictable.
you know,
That's the key thing. And
yeah,
so there's two.
predictable service.
So the initial version that we make is only as strong as the hosting environment that we run them in. So it's going to require a lot of sort of like permission where people allow it. But as our software advances, when we get a decentralized version that runs with the same censorship resistance as, say, Ethereum, then it becomes a little bit different because you're like, oh dear, this thing actually can do stuff in the world and I can't turn it off easily. Okay. But then there's another type of environment that we need to at some point set up, which is one where it would be like a stock market that was entirely for autonomous companies, because it needs, these AI companies need a home, like they need a base or a defense post. I'm sure you get what I mean there,
Yeah, no, and there'll be some interesting interactions with that as well, because then, although they're autonomous in providing their service, they're not autonomous in terms of the stock market.
That's right.
That is based on outside observers,
That's right.
lending them money or putting,
Yeah,
buying
and
stock.
and that stock market wouldn't be just a stock market. It would also be like a WeWork for the agents, and it would also be a institution or a what's the word for it? Like a power of attorney. Like it would hold real world bank accounts for them. It would file real taxes. It would integrate with the existing institutions on behalf of these autonomous agents. And so the people who work for these agents can trust that the machines work well, and the the shareholders and the investors can be they're like, well, it's very predictable. I mean, the returns are, it's never going to go skyrocketing because it's so predictable, but it's just going to be gradually good value creation from this AI taxi
But that's
service or
that's
this.
the thing. Yeah, I know we're talking like not now, but it's kind of cool every
It's
now
not far.
again to riff on what's possible.
It's
But
not far.
what we'd see there is effectively um, emergent behavior in an AL sense, an artificial life sense,
Yeah.
where you
Yeah. Yeah.
get these AIs bouncing around and say different taxi services, and one was built just slightly less than the other one would eventually disappear and run out of
Yeah.
money and
Yeah.
just stop.
Yeah.
And you'd get some competitive pressure on there,
Yeah. But
and because
and they'd know
pressure
when
is
to
decentralized.
intelligently merge. Like they'd recognize
Yeah,
and they'd broker clean deals in the open. They'd start talking to each other, be like, hey, we should merge. Yeah, maybe we should. Yeah. And next minute, pop,
yeah,
merger.
yeah. But all the time, the service provided is trending towards the most fruitful
Yeah.
service in terms of how many people you attract to use that service.
Right. And the
Um,
motivations of the company are coded in natural language at the heart of the bot that's running it. And you're like, well, it's displacing all the other services, but I do believe in what it has written on its heart, and it's executing on it faithfully. So, maybe that's
yeah,
the thing to grow.
yeah.
I
Well,
think
that'd be
that's
really
very
cool.
close. Now, the reason why I think
Many
that's
reasons.
close is if we can get this system up
Mm.
and we can get agents that can guide us and keep us sane and keep others sane so that we do nothing but rational, data-based, logical decisions from here on in, I think that we would both be surprised at how fast we can grow in this current expanding environment. And that's why I'm like, well, we need this base loop
I agree.
because it needs to keep us safe. We have the power here to keep track of tens of thousands of moving targets accurately, reliably. And the agents have
Yeah.
this amplifying effect. Once you get good at managing a handful of them, you can make another agent that can now manage that dozen or so. And then you just get this hierarchy where suddenly we'll find that from a very high level, we can control a huge swarm of agents at nanoscale all the way up to gigascale because we have these tools that let us zoom in and out and zap all around and coordinate better with others like us.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting. In AL terms, that means people become the environment. And by that, I mean, um, if you've got a completely static environment, then eventually AL gets into equilibrium and there's no further benefit to changing because they've merged and,
Right.
competed and some have died out and you get it. But the environment is a thing that changes. Suddenly an asteroid hits or whatever and all the
Mm.
dinosaurs fuck off and get mammals. But in this case, the environment is the interaction with humans.
Mm-hmm.
It's a thing that it jogs it, and the humans can go in and saying, "Hey, suddenly I like yellow taxis, not black taxis." Doesn't matter, but that jiggles the environment, and then it comes up to a new equilibrium. Maybe not everyone likes yellow or black. Maybe it's 25, 75, or whatever. But the thing is, it's self-writing. It's inherently self-writing. That's really cool. That is really cool. And with the stock market, then you also get to promote. Which again is another external impetus into the environment. Suddenly, when black taxis get a whole bunch of guys giving them money to provide more black taxis. Uh, huh. Okay. Well, let me think. Sorry, I'm blathering a bit there.
It's cool, buddy.
But this is really strong. This is really, really strong. This is nice. It's very nice. What time is it? Okay.
Right, so we're kind of trying to separate out the essential features to the stuck loop from the non-essential ones so that we can build a UI and a system where stucks and solutions can start being processed, which is what's going to let us improve. And so we launch with just the bare minimum to have that stuff working. Every problem we hit goes into the stuck loop, the stuck stack. We start developing tools to auto detect stucks and auto file them, as well as tools or agents that trigger when a new stuck or a change to a stuck occurs, and they will attempt to solve it autonomously without any human intervention. Then they'll evolve to know when to call humans for help. They may post to Upwork on behalf. All those fun things come from having this very basic, simple, bare bones, evolvable system.
Yeah, and you can have a. Where are the actual bank accounts? Is a bank account an installed app, or is that just the API
I
gateway?
think so because there's two ways to treat money. One is the conventional sense where someone else holds your money and you have an agreement with them to manipulate it, and the other is this new age money, which is held on a blockchain that is still controllable by a third party, but much more difficult to be done so. And so there is a. I don't have any plans to do it in the short term, but we can directly bond the execution of these naps to, say, an Ethereum wallet in a way that's cryptographically strong. and then that's the wallet of the repo. But there's no reason why it couldn't hold NFTs, it couldn't hold different chains and all that. The reason, like, it still hinges on our hosting service being unimpeachable for that to be actually legitimate. But as soon as we have a decentralized hosting system in place, then being connected to those crypto assets becomes very powerful, because if you can't turn off the repo and the repo controls assets that can't be censored, then you've got a great sort of a mix going on there.
Doesn't that point to the idea that there is a token that is passed between repos on attribution events, for example, which that token is stable enough that when it's cashed out into either a crypto wallet or into a bank account or whatever, that's the point of payment. But while inside, it's once
Are you talking about an
it is
intrinsic?
auditable enough.
You want to make an intrinsic currency that's designed to be repo to repo natively?
What kind of points to that? Yeah, because that's frictionless and can be completely stable up until the point where it is transferred for outside to anything else, crypto wallet, bank account.
You might be right. You might be wrong. There are certainly, most definitely, ways to optimize the bookkeeping system inside the repos or the network of repos, but I think that is a problem that we can put in the stuck loop. I think that we don't need to solve that to get Stucks going. I think that we'll hit money. Like, I guess my philosophy is like, if we can just get the stuck loop up, let's just see which problems we hit first. That problem you talk about, maybe that's a solution to a problem we hit very early on. I don't know. Maybe there are some other areas, like even tonight you highlighted something that you found very interesting, like this 3D RBACs thing. I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, that's how it has to be, because I don't know, I've been thinking about that for almost a decade, right? But you're like, no, that's actually awesome, and there's all these corollaries that follow on from that. But it's the same with having an intrinsic token being bonded to blockchains, having a legitimate bank account that's handled by, say, a lawyer that acts as the agent of the entity. There's all these different ways that you could go about it. It's not clear which is the best path. And so I think we should not pick one and just get the stuck loop up and just
I agree.
fucking roll from there, man.
It's quite fun thinking about it, though.
Oh, I know, absolutely. Yeah.
The stuck loop is the thing. I mean,
the stuck loop's the thing.
Because there's all sorts of things that you could do in terms of, for example, moving the weight of who's going to pay the tokens for execution around inside the system. There'll be another.
It's all just it's all like, so long as we can.
It's like call collect. Remember that?
Right. Yeah. Call collect. Like, yeah. Well, that's the other thing, right? Like you need to be able to make it user pays. Like you could set a standalone repo that had no money, and then everything has to be user pays. Other systems, you might be like, well, I'm going to load it with $1,000 and I want it to answer free questions, but only about helium balloons. It's
yeah.
Right. And then it's like, what we'll start to see is all these problems will start being generated, and we'll just hit the most important ones. I don't think there's a smarter way to do it than that, because there's so many.
I absolutely agree. But the fun part is actually these come quite fast and often, just when you start to think about, okay, if I had a stuck loop and we have these repos as described.
Yeah. You'd be surprised, though. I bet that you will be surprised by what actually turns out to be the most important problems to solve first.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would have never predicted a kangaroo. Bloody efficient mammal, though, isn't it? Or
Mm.
marsupial.
Marsupilami.
It's bloody efficient. Uh, um, but it's the mechanism.
All right. Well,
The mechanism
is
that in
that
our case
is
yeah.
that this session done then? Because I
Yeah,
feel like we're like,
I think so. I'm just blithering now with my mind thinking about all sorts of stucks to put in.
you're welcome to do that. All right. I'll stop the recording.
Yeah, cool.